So I got asked the other day if I'd be interested in doing some spills on my parenting philosophies on this podcast, which I'd been planning to do anyway. But they said, I think you're a really good parent, which I appreciate. And I would love to hear some of your approaches on how you handle things. So the first two that I'm going to talk about today are teaching your kids logic behind saying no and not just saying because I said so. And the other is why I no longer spank my children. And I'll kind of go into that. Background as a parent. I've been a single parent since 2016 when I got divorced. My kids at the time were ages 2.5 and 5.5, and I obtained custody of them. I'm a custodial parent as a male in the state of Texas, which, from what I understand, is pretty rare, and I'm grateful for. They're with me 90% of the time. But while I don't have a educational background in childhood psychology or psychology, my educational background and work experience is business, supply chain, leadership, of course, art and music, but those are hobbies. I do think I've had pretty good experiences as a single parent and grown and developed a lot over the past almost 7 years. So here's kind of a couple of my approaches on how I handle things. And I always try to keep in mind that as a parent, we're teaching our kids how we're going to handle the world and how to be productive members of society. And as parents, if we come home and we're stressed from work and we yell and we cuss and we turn to things like alcohol or worse, drug abuses to cope and handle that, and our kids see that we're doing that, they're going to grow up and probably have some issues from it. And I always think of it as in the workplace, ideally you don't yell and cuss at people. You don't yell and cuss at adults. And you shouldn't. So why would you do that with your kids? In the sense we have to, if we want to, in my opinion, have our kids grow up and be productive members of society and productive adults and mature and use logic and reasoning and not be damaged, we can't yell and cuss at them and abuse alcohol or drugs. They just don't need to see those things. They may turn to those type of things as well, if not worse. So I strive for the opposite approach of that. And I'm also trying to teach my kids that while we have nice things, that while we live in a pretty nice house and we get to go on vacation and do nice things, we go hiking all the time, have a pretty good job, and we have nice stuff, that material items are definitely not the key to happiness, and that you can be filthy rich and be absolutely miserable, that we live on this planet for this tiny speck of time, and we have to maximize every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, and that happiness comes from within, and it shouldn't be based on somebody external, and that we shouldn't count on anybody else for our happiness aside from ourselves. And there's a lot of things that we have to work through and be tough mentally to get past, because life sucks sometimes. It's not always going to be easy. It's going to really suck and be difficult and be a crap show some days. So that's another thing I try to teach them. And it's not that I'm not coaching them to work hard and have ambition, to strive for career success, to strive for financial success, and even get the material items that they want. I just want them to know that those things don't lead to happiness, and sometimes they dang sure help. Mobility helps. When you have money and you have the freedom to travel and go places, even if it's a 4-hour day trip, and that's what you like to do, and you don't have to sit at home all day on the weekend, then that aids your happiness, and sometimes being career driven helps you get there. So it's kind of my spill on that. That's what I hope I'm teaching them. My kids are pretty well rounded. Both of them struggle some in school, but as far as being kind and empathetic, good listeners, creative, pretty mellow kids, they are excellent, in my opinion. And I hope to continue to shape them that way. So why did I quit spanking my children a couple years ago? I guess the number one reason was I was finding it was not effective, and I got only a negative reaction from them. And I had much better luck giving them choices, putting them in timeout, taking a step back, and taking myself out of the situation, taking the timeout, me stepping away, playing guitar, sitting by the piano, painting, going outside, just taking myself out of the situation until I cool off so that I don't have that negative reaction. I don't have the urge to yell or cuss at them. And the spanking thing, I used to kind of believe in it as well until I just started getting absolutely no reaction or the opposite reaction out of my kids. And so I got to researching that one day too. And there's a lot of studies that show parents who use spanking as a form of punishment consistently experience decreased compliance, just like I said. There's studies that show that kids have poor moral internalization. That means that when parents are away and those children are far less likely to make good decisions. Kind of goes back to explaining to them why you're saying no. And there's a lot of cases of abuse that begin with kids growing up and thinking it's at least okay or somewhat okay to be physically punished. And there's some pretty good studies out there too that kids that are spanked or physically punished quite a bit have a 5-point lower IQ than kids that are not. Kids that are redirected as a form of guidance as opposed to physically spanked, they tend to not have near as many anxiety disorders and their brain develops more. Again, I think spanking teaches your kid that violence is okay, and I think any form of touch should be positive. So some of the things I mentioned that I do as opposed to spanking are give them an option, give them an alternative. And so an example that I did not too long ago with my oldest, when she was talking and disrespecting her brother and just generally just not treating the whole household too well, was, hey, you're leaning against that wall. She's kind of be pouty. I said, why don't you do some wall sits? And that's what we did. It worked really well. She did it for 80 seconds. Her legs were shaking. She may hate them when she's older. I don't know. But that was not me physically laying hands on her. And I actually got over there and did them with her. And now, if I get a little bit of attitude, I'm like, hey, you want to do some wall sits? Of course, she's like, no. And we're good. It helped a lot. The other approach is putting kids in timeout. I think it's a minute per year of age. And that worked really well for a while. I think my oldest, being almost 12, is kind of out of that stage, so we do other alternatives that work well. Youngest could still be doing timeout, but honestly, he's pretty mellow, and I don't have to get on to him much, other for fighting with his sister a little bit, which is to be expected as siblings, I think. I think there's a level of that is known to happen. But taking a timeout, again, is not just for them. Sometimes I need to do that, and I need to step away. And another thing I like to do, and I try to coach my kids this way, and I don't want to use the term preach, but coach is a better way to phrase it. But it's just the three of us that live in this house. It's just been the three of us since 2016 that have lived here. I've not had a girlfriend who's ever moved in. And we all share responsibility for keeping our space cozy and comfortable and making it be a place that we can come home and relax to. And part of that responsibility for all of us, and it's not just me as a parent, is keeping our space clean. So my kids do laundry, they scrub floors, they scrub toilets, they clean sinks, they clean counters, they clean baseboards. They do pretty much whatever I ask them to do. And although I don't make them do those things every day of the week, they do them 3 or 4 times a week as needed. We tag team, and they probably help do 4 loads of laundry a week. There's something they do little, at least every day. And I think as parents that you're doing your kids and yourself a disservice if you're taking that all on by yourself. I remember when I was young, I learned to do basic cooking and cleaning when I was 8 or 9. Cleaning probably earlier than that. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that my parents were okay with making me get off my butt and clean and learn how to do that, and grandparents too. I mean, a big thing that we used to do when we go camping with my grandfather, we'd get to a campsite and somebody had left trash all over the place. It wasn't our trash, but we picked it up because we wanted to leave that space cleaner than it was when we got there. And that was just, if we didn't do that, then, we got disciplined. So that's another round of advice. And when kids do things like that, even if you ask them, I think you have to recognize it with positive behavior. And what I've found out since I've started doing a good job of that is a lot of time the kids will see the bathroom counters or the counters need cleaned off. They'll get their wipes or clean solution and go clean it without me even asking it. They'll get on their hands and knees and clean the baseboards without me asking them. And I reward that very positively. Even when I don't ask them, or even when I do ask them and they clean it, it may not be immediate, but they're going to know later in the day that I appreciate what they did. And now there's not any negative feelings associated with helping out with chores because they know it's temporary. It's a temporary discomfort, if you will. And what I teach them is you have to put in the work with everything. Doesn't matter if it's school, if it's chores, taking care of yourself. You have to put in the work to be successful. If you learn to work hard, you treat people kind, you learn empathy, you're emotionally intelligent, that you can do anything in the world that you want to do. Thanks for listening.